I'd like to present Dr. Joseph P. Farrell. At least we think it's Dolby THX. It could be interference from the powers that be, but we're going to call it Dolby for now. So we have a great series of show segments lined up for you today. As you know, this is the never-ending show. It goes on and on and on, and we just have more segments. And we always try to have more questions than Dr. Farrell can possibly answer in a day.
Yes, I know.
but we've got a great lineup. So I'm going to do the quick rundown of table of contents. Dr. Farrell has no idea what these questions are going to be, but I want to give him just a hint of the topic. Because making him uncomfortable prior to a show is part of every show producer's duty. Here are our topics, Dr. Farrell. Today we're going to cover geopolitical realignment, mineral solvency, aeronautical secrecy, scientific theology, textual fiction, banking shenanigans, Russian anthropology, JFK secrecy, Bilderberg assassination, Olympic aliens, dark technology, dark matter, space matter, Vesta exploration, GMO slaughter, Nazi multiculturalism, and bearer bonds. We can do this anywhere you like, but
Nazi multicultural.
Oh, you wait. Yeah, we're going to get there. I ask you some pointed questions that should make you go,
okay.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. But first, our theme song.
That's not CPE.
Folks, temporary layoffs, easy credit rip-offs. If you want to understand the economy and what's happening with the banksters today, look to the good times, okay?
Yeah, true.
Temporary layoffs, easy credit rip-offs. Now, but anyway, so we've got our theme show and our Dolby sound check and our list of scary topics, Dr. Farrell. I'm going to go ahead and start with geopolitical realignment. And what I want to ask you about, every one of these topics is something that you've blogged upon, but you just haven't given us enough. So Germany and Russia, are they a new axis in the balance of power? So they're getting together economically, they're getting together with trade agreements, and now they're doing joint military exercises, which is usually the first sign that they are an axis
going after Poland.
Basically, yeah. So this is each one of these is a multi-part question. But is what we're seeing emerge a new political axis that designed to offset the West and its own sort of goals and desire and stratagems on geopolitical control?
Well, to the extent that you have Russia and China, India, Brazil, the so-called BRICS nations, all right, to the extent that you have Russia and China particularly trying to, and I've posted recently an open letter by President Vladimir Putin prior to his last state visit to China. And if you read it carefully, you'll discover that what he is saying is that you cannot have a monopolar, unipolar world dancing around the dictates of Washington, D.C., Wall Street, the City of London. So, yes, I do think we are seeing a geopolitical realignment. China and Russia have made that very clear. I've commented publicly about the Chinese and Russians deciding that they're going to conduct their trade apart from any tie to the dollar. That is a trend that is only going to continue. India and Iran have decided that they're going to conduct their trade independently of the dollar, do it directly in rupees. Brazil is, to me, the most interesting country in this BRICS nations mix, because Brazil, I've talked about the fact that Brazil, beginning in the Cosmic War and SS Brotherhood of the Bell and so on, Brazil is one of those nations that, according to some, and I think there's a bit of evidence for it, that according to some has been investigating so-called scalar physics and scalar, or if you prefer the expression, quantum potential weapons, all right? David Bohm, Dr. Richard Hellman from Germany were both involved in projects in Brazil. And there's the interesting thing, Daniel, about Brazil is if you Google various physics papers, a lot of these are coming out of Brazil, all right? They're coming particularly from a fellow by the name of Dr. Fran de Aquino. And if you Google him, you'll discover that there's all sorts of takes on his work, ranging the whole spectrum, from the guy's a fraud, a nut, and a quack, to the guy's the most brilliant living physicist today. Well, to me, all this signifies the fact that Brazil is sick and tired of being more or less the lap poodle of the United States. They have a major economy, they have a good infrastructure, they're technologically sophisticated, and I think that their recent announcement that they want to expand their space capability in conjunction with the Chinese is another sign that this post-World War II Anglo-American empire is falling apart, all right? And what disturbs me now, Daniel, is into this...
You heard it, folks. Falling apart.
What disturbs me now is in the midst of all of this geopolitical realignment, we are also going through a financial one, all right? And I'll be very blunt. I've been trying to watch this and understand it and read as many different sources, you're probably the same way, as to what's going on in Europe, in North America, with this financial system. And I've come to the conclusion, Daniel, that not even the experts really know what the heck is going on, all right? I think you could say that of J.P. Morgan. I think you could say it of Goldman Sachs. I think you can say it of the Federal Reserve. You could say it certainly of the Bank of England, the Royal Bank of Scotland. Now we have Barclays Bank involved in Great Britain, one of Britain's largest banks, a very powerful bank, involved in a LIBOR scandal. As all of this is going on, here sits Germany in Europe, and they're being basically told that they must bail out the rest of Europe. Well, let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that they do this. What this means is it basically means that Europe becomes German-dominated once again. It already is, to a certain extent, but it will become dominated by that country much, much more than it is now. The European Union will basically be a front for Germany, all right?
Basically,
the Germans
they're going to gobble them up, folks.
Yeah, basically, that's right. But the other problem is the Germans themselves don't want this because the tax burden is going to fall on them, all right? So let's assume it goes the other way. Let's assume the European Union dissolves. By the nature of the case, and we're already seeing signs of this, by the nature of the geopolitical case, Germany imports most of its energy from Russia, all right? It produces a lot of its own, but Chancellor Merkel has decided that in the wake of the Fukushima disaster, Germany is going off of nuclear, so Germany is going to gravitate inevitably, because her biggest energy trading partner is Russia, her biggest export trading partner is China and some of the other countries in Eastern Europe, Germany will inevitably gravitate into that BRICS orbit. If that happens, and this is what I think is behind, and this is very important for people to understand, I think what's going on in Europe, Daniel, is as much about geopolitics and about Germany as it is about the finances. What they're trying to do, and trying desperately to do, and this is a very important point, is they're trying to tie Germany into Europe by making Germany the creditor nation for the rest of Europe. In other words, that's their current technique or approach for keeping Germany firmly within the EU. Whether it's going to work or not, I don't know, because what they're trying to prevent is Germany going to those BRICS nations. If that happens, as I've pointed out in blogs on the site, if that happens, you have London's worst geopolitical nightmare since the German Empire was founded in 1871, and that is that Germany would seek some sort of rapprochement with Russia, and thereby be able to dominate that Eurasian heartland with Russia. Remember, we've got China in this mix, and we've got India in this mix. This is part of the reason, I think, Daniel, that you're seeing what I can only describe as panic on the part of these Western political and financial elites. They desperately want to keep the EU together. And the reason they want to keep the EU together is that it is a check on independent German action. And as you've pointed out, Germany, as usual, is playing a very, very subtle diplomatic game. It's playing the game of saying that it's going to support European policies, but at the same time, it's conducting joint military exercises with, guess who? Russia. The last time Germany and Russia conducted joint military exercises was a little thing called Operation Barbarossa, and before that, it was the invasion of Poland.
So that hat with the spike on it that I have around here?
Yeah,
I've got my helmet,
the Pickelhaube.
Yeah, and then add China. So let me ask you this.
China.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Dr. Farrell, you did mention, scalar physics actually ran the gamut of different things like that. We do have a guest caller. Her name is Sarah, last initial P, and here's what she has.
Using energy as a weapon, we cannot leave ourselves at the mercy of foreign suppliers.
So Sarah P. is talking about energy weapons and needing to have we can't trust foreign suppliers. So I don't know the relevance to this, but I thought that we ought to let her have her say. That's what we do.
Yeah, please.
Even people like Sarah.
Let her have her say somewhere else.
That's right. They can pop up and so Sarah, do call back if we didn't answer your question. And we did.
Jeez.
We'll have other guest callers.
Oh, jeez.
I had to put Adolf on hold. We're going to make him wait an incredibly long time. I don't understand a word he's saying, and it's very sort of
Oh, jeez.
Every time you bring up Germany, he calls. My phone's light up. So, I think he's in Brazil. But anyway. So, is it the case that, and if we hit our station identification, folks, we'll break and we'll pick this up in the next segment. But is it the case that we are seeing, because you're talking about, hey, when J.P. Morgan's in the dark about banking, the world has reached, the apocalypse.
Right.
Is it the case that the West is orchestrating some of this, or is it the case that powers inimical to the West are trying to create an alternative to the existing Western banking apparatus that has created a power structure where we're on top, they're on the bottom? And when I say the West,
I think,
as we talk about Germany moving off, we acknowledge that when they join up with China and Russia, they cease essentially being the West. That's really the cultural and geopolitical thing here, is that once they break off from the rest of Europe and go, we really have more in common with the Russians and the Chinese, they're not in the West. So,
well, what I think, and I've said this publicly many times, I think, first of all, you have the likely prospect that this whole financial crisis was somebody's form of economic warfare against the West. Now, that could take in itself two different forms, Daniel. It could take the form of somebody targeting Western banks, or it could take the form of Western bankers themselves targeting the middle class of their own indigenous populations. And there's a bit of both aspects going on here. This is why it's so difficult and complex. But you also have all of these machinations going on in Europe to try and contain Germany, keep it firmly in Europe. You've got the geopolitical realignment taking place in Asia. So as far as I'm concerned, Daniel, what it's looking to me is that you do have a real struggle for power going on behind the scenes in the financial markets of the world. Germany is certainly involved. China and Russia are certainly involved in some of these machinations. Recently, India has joined them. I fully expect eventually that Japan will too. And the reason why is I go back to certain things I said about the Fukushima disaster. Prior to that disaster, the Japanese electorate threw out the ruling party that basically had been in charge of Japan since the end of World War II. A state visit of Emperor Akihito was scheduled to Beijing, all right? The Japanese government, after that election, formally requested the United States to remove its base from Okinawa. In other words, the Japanese were sending every signal that they possibly could that they were going to turn toward an Asia orientation and away from this post-war transatlantic, trans-Pacific alliance of Europe, the United States, and Japan. All right, this the Western financial and political elites could not allow, and that's why I'm extremely suspicious of the whole Fukushima disaster thing. So I suspect eventually you're going to see some financial wheeling and dealing coming out of Japan about all of this as well. That's my prediction for the next 6 months to a year out from where we're at today. We're going to see more vigorous noises from Japan regarding its relationship to the United States and to the rest of the Orient. So I see this as vast financial war. All right, now
before you go on, Dr. Farrell, we do have to break this segment for the sake of our YouTube limits and, of course, to do station identification. Folks, we're going to be coming back with the rest of what Dr. Farrell has to say about the Armageddon alignment that we're seeing emerge. And in the meantime, stand by.